Right, fellow Agilists, welcome to season two and the latest installment of the Virtually Agile videocast. As always, we firmly believe here in neurodiversity and amplifying voices that are seldom heard, but also alongside hearing from established thought leaders. And today's guest is the author of the book Retrospective Anti-patterns and also a continuous improvement coach at the Lego Group. So I'm sure Aino and I are going to have lots to talk about. I'm pleased to welcome Aino to the show. Now, Aino, how are you today?
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very good today.
Glad to hear it. You're back from your holiday, I believe. How was it? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I did. I had a great time. I went to Germany and then I went to Sweden. And it's interesting to see how the COVID rules coming from Denmark were different in Germany and Sweden from each other and from Denmark, even though we're all sort of neighboring countries. So that was interesting.
Sure. I was very much hoping to go to Mexico in September as a bit of a break between work, but unfortunately got added to the red list in the UK, so that's no
Yeah.
longer an option. So I'm thinking I might go to Greece and climb Mount Olympus, or I
Ah,
might go to Norway and see if I can go far enough as Svalbard, the Arctic Circle where the
yeah,
polar bears live, and just go on a bit of an expedition.
yeah.
That sounds
Okay,
like
so
my
good luck if you're visiting the polar bears.
Yeah, they are dangerous beasts. So, I know for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with your work, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you
Yes.
do?
So I'm one of these people where everything in my work life has been sort of accidental. So I always wanted to teach. At first, I wanted to teach mathematics, and then I wanted to teach computer science at the university. So I became a PhD. So then a researcher and a teacher at the university, and then I came out in industry and taught a bit there. And then I came back to university, and then back to industry, and then back to university. And then I started my own company 11 years ago, metadeveloper, because I'm not a developer, but I'm developing developers. So that's the meta developer. So what I've been doing for the past 15 years is mainly facilitating retrospectives and other meetings, and as you mentioned in your introduction, being a continuous improvement coach for various companies. At the moment, it's Lego in Denmark, which is a lot of fun. And I have so much more Lego than I had when I started.
One can never have too much Lego. What I
No,
love about Lego is that I talk to friends, particularly friends my age who've now got children, and they've bought these new Lego sets, and I'm always asking, is that set genuinely for you, or is that for your kids? And they're kind of like, well, it's kind of a bit of both. It's a bit of both. But the beauty of it is that you can buy lots of Lego, and it just transcends generations and ages, and you can buy it, and you just combine multiple sets and create what you want. So Lego, wonderful thing, big
yeah,
fan. And I
it is
also
a
love the
wonderful thing.
love the continuous improvement coach title because I think there's a lot of agile coaches out there, but for me, one of the main cruxes of what an agile coach is trying to do is result in continuous improvement. So continuous improvement coach, great title there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, given the theme of this podcast is about amplifying newer voices, is there anyone out there that you feel is doing some great work that perhaps isn't already speaking at conferences and meetups that maybe I should reach out to, or that should be heard from, or maybe that should feature on the show? I know.
Yes, I definitely. I have a small list that I'll send you after this talk. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Any particular names you can think of at the moment, or without putting you on the spot?
Well, I have no. I have a list. I just don't know if they want to be sort of that public. But I can mention one which I think will not mind. But that's somebody that I know from Denmark, Teresa Henson. She's been doing a lot of blogging,
Okay.
and one of the things that I like about her, she's working as an agile coach as well. One of the things that I really like about her is that she's just living her life as she wants to live it. So at the moment, living half the year in Thailand and getting a lot of exercise, getting a lot of warmth, and half the year in Denmark, where she can be with friends and family. And I like the way that she makes her work and her private life fit together beautifully.
I think that is the dream. As the virtual agile coach, someone who primarily does
Yeah,
most of his work from a virtual setting. I have gone off and spent
yeah,
like a month working in Dubai and other locations, And the idea of kind of having work and play together, and this is what I do as well. Like one of the reasons that I'm wearing a silly hat right now, one of the reasons that I create these themed retrospectives and use gamification as teaching concepts is basically me being an inner child, but bringing it to the workplace and allowing people to have fun in the workplace, because I'm a firm believer
Yeah.
the workplace can be fun with a bit of creativity. So I love the sound of what your colleague there is doing. Now, tell us about your book. What are the common retrospective anti-patterns that you observe? The book's titled Retrospective Anti-Patterns. I believe it's got an octopus on the title,
It
on the
does
on the
have an
cover.
octopus with an
And if I recall,
octopus.
you've got physical octopuses like lying around the room as
I've
well.
got a physical octopus that I sometimes wear as a hat, sort of like a thinking hat. And I have a
Nice.
lot of smaller octopuses as well. Sometimes when I give presentations online, I give the presentations to these small octopuses. I put them next to the camera.
Just to
So people will
practice.
think that I'm smiling at them and talking to them, but I'm actually giving my talk to my smaller octopuses. So, well, back to the book. So retrospective anti-patterns. Well, there is the book came about because, as I said, I was facilitating a lot of retrospectives, and I noticed that there were some things that went wrong over and over again. So it's like recurring problems, or that I was creating the wrong recurring solutions in some contexts. For instance, the ignorance of the prime directive. So the first book by Noam Kurth about project retrospectives had the prime directive of retrospectives in it, which is that basically remember that everybody did the best they could, given what they knew at the time, the resources at hand, the skill set available. So that mindset, um, the prime directive mindset, going into a retrospective with that, I think is so important. And I think some people are going into the retrospective trying to think about who can we blame, who's the scapegoat, and who made something stupid. And even if they're not doing it consciously, they're probably sometimes doing it subconsciously, thinking either, oh, I need to figure out who it is, or it could also be even worse, maybe that they think it's their fault, and thus they're afraid of going to the retrospective because they think they're going to be found out. So they might go to the retrospective and shut up, not saying anything, or they might just skip the retrospective altogether. So I think that prime directive, if you ignore that prime directive as a facilitator, you can end up in quite a bad retrospective. So what you should do as a facilitator, the refactored solution in my book, all the anti-patterns has a refactored solution. What you should do instead of ignoring it is to remind people about the prime directive. It could be that you put it on a poster, you write the whole wording, or you just say it in the email, or just remind people when they enter the room. Remember, we're trying to find faults in the system of people, not in particular people. And one of the reasons for ignoring the prime directive can be um, that you as a facilitator are afraid that maybe the developers that you're facilitating for will find it a bit too hippie happy or ignorant or idealistic, because they'll be saying, of course there was somebody who didn't do the best they could. Even I didn't do the best I could. I remember that there were some points where I didn't do the best I could. So it's a bit controversial where people are saying you can't expect people to truly believe that everybody did the best. But I think that the point that Norm Kurth had about the fact that it's a mindset is quite important.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love the retro prime directive. I use it. I build it into every retrospective template I create. I will not do any retrospective without making mention of the prime directive. And what you mentioned there about, I guess, the reluctance, or it feeling a little bit like a hippie-esque thing. The way I have personally navigated past that is I do it in a bit of a self-deprecating way. I'll introduce the prime directive and I'll be like, well, I'm aware it sounds like it's something from Star Trek, prime directive. And sometimes, particularly if you're doing a themed retrospective, what's something I've been doing recently is tweaking the language of the directive to make it
Mm,
to fit with the theme. So, for example, I did a
mm,
retrospective collaboration just in the past week with a couple of guys, Steve Sampson Jones and Dave Westgarth, and we did a Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, etc., themed retrospective. And in that world, that universe, they always have those Acme products, the TNT,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
anvils that are going to fall on you. And rather than it just
Yeah.
being the normal retro prime directive, what I said was, regardless of what Acme products may blow up in our faces, we toons understand that we've done the best job we could given the situation at hand, experience,
Mm,
etc. So you can
mhm.
lighten the mood by altering just the language of
Yeah.
the directive itself. And as you say, making it present, making it part of the retrospective. It's for me, it's always the beginning thing that I'll mention at a retrospective, and I often build it into the email invites as well, just to remind
Yeah.
people. It sets for me, it sets the context for unconditional positive regard, which is what I want from a retrospective. So that was one of the
Yes. Surely.
anti-patterns. Any other particular ones?
Yeah. So another one, which is one of my favorites, is the Wheel of Fortune. And in the Wheel of Fortune, you should imagine that you're in a Tivoli and you scroll the Wheel of Fortune, and then the little ticker goes like this, tick, 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 and then the wheel stops and the
Hmm.
ticker points to something. And that number could be that you get a prize, or it could be that you win nothing, you waste your money. So that's the picture I want you to have in the mind. So if you have a retrospective where you gather data and you, for instance, say, this is what we should stop doing, this is what we should start doing, this is what we should continue doing, and then you want to save time and you want to go directly from gathering data to deciding what to do, then sometimes, like in the Wheel of Fortune in the real life, you end up with something which is actually the problem, which is great. You win a prize and you find a solution. But sometimes what you come up with is just a symptom of the problem. Let me give you an example. So it could be that you gather data and people say we should have less meetings. Like we don't want as many meetings as we have. That's very common for a retrospective.
Hmm.
And then what you could do if you go directly from gathering data to deciding what to do, you say, well, we'll just skip stand-ups. We won't have stand-ups twice a week, and we won't have this refinement meeting and things like that. And then you think that you solved the problem, but maybe you haven't. Next time they still want fewer meetings. So if you instead spend time on generating insights and trying to figure out why is it that people want fewer meetings, then maybe you'll find that the reason why they want fewer meetings is because the quality of the meetings is not good. That there's no agenda, there's no explicit goal with the meeting. It's the wrong people who are invited. It's they don't have a facilitator, so they end up being a waste of time with some people talking all the time and some people not having any chance to talk. And I think that the Wheel of Fortune is something that you often experience in a retrospective if you choose to save time by not generating insights. And generating insights could be, it could be delving into something multi-structural cause analysis like the fishbone or Ishikawa diagram where you find different causes for a problem, but it could also be just a little conversation about this. So there's post-it notes saying fewer meetings. What's the problem? And what do you want to achieve with that? What's your aim with this? And then you can
Hmm.
generate insights like that. And then maybe it comes out that they think the meetings are a waste of time, and then that's what you can work with. So I think this is something that often happens, especially if you want to save time.
I've
And the
definitely
point, of
observed that
course,
before. Definitely observed that
yeah,
before.
and the refactored solution is to remember to generate insights so that
Mm,
when you solve something, it's the actual problem and not just the symptom of the problem.
yeah. And one of the ones I've seen in the past was we need less meetings. We're too busy, or we're too busy to do retrospectives.
Yeah, yeah,
And oh, that's a dangerous game.
yes.
So again, it's always results in me prompting questions. So okay, so what happens if you didn't have a retrospective? And then okay, well we'd have more time. All right, but are you happy with how things are currently running now? No, well, that we're frustrated about this and about this and about this. Okay, so in the absence of retrospective, where would you have identified different ways of doing things and how to improve?
Mm,
So often, teams can think, oh, we'll just skip the retrospective, but then they just end up accepting their reality. Taking no
yeah,
action to change how things currently are is in itself a decision, and it's basically the team and acknowledging and being aware that this is my reality, this is how things are, and I'm accepting that because I'm not doing anything differently. Einstein's definition of
yeah,
insanity is obviously doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. And if a team's doing that, it's just madness. So, yeah, big believer
definitely.
in doing something different. And the whole meeting
Yeah,
thing as
and
well. One of the things I was gonna touch upon on the meeting thing was one of the things that I've been increasingly doing to try and improve meetings, not just retrospectives, is to build in feedback loops into every ceremony, every meeting. So for my retrospectives, for example, the end of the retrospective, there is a way for the team to say on a fist of five, right? Has it been valuable? Has everyone participated? Has everyone felt safe doing so? And that way you're building in a feedback loop to say, hang on, was this session even useful? And how could it be better next time? And you can do the same with
Yeah,
stand-ups and refinements. You can add a way of rating, has this been useful? And if it hasn't been, then what could we do differently? And I think a lot of teams can get into the habit of just doing, well, it's a ceremony, we'll do the ceremony, and then yeah, it only comes up at a retrospective. We've got too many meetings, or they're not adding value, but there's no why. They haven't discovered that why. So I
exactly.
think
Yeah,
more feedback loops into the value of meetings. Am I needed there? Was everyone participating? Because there's a culture where people, if you're invited to a meeting, often people are invited for awareness, particularly in the remote world, for
yeah,
awareness because they don't
yeah,
want them to feel left
yeah.
out. And then there can be a pressure to say, oh, I've got to be there because I've been invited now.
Yeah,
And more people should just say, well, I'm not going to add anything to that meeting, so I'm going to decline that one.
yeah,
I think it was Elon Musk who was saying that, just like just decline more meetings. Just if you're not going to be part of it, decline it. Because what often happens is people are in meetings and they're just working on other things in parallel anyway, which means they're probably not really present. They're not adding value.
definitely. Yeah, I agree. And I think that question, the why question, is probably being asked too little. People
Mhm.
are just accepting that this is how it is. We have to go to this meeting because it's part of the ceremonies of this process that we have, and we don't question it. But I think questioning things are really important. And also, I think that if people choose to say not have retrospectives, it's funny how sometimes people forget that not making a decision or not doing something is actually also doing a lot of things.
Mm,
It's if you don't make a decision, that's also a decision made of
yeah.
just accepting the things that are.
Mm,
And so that's a question that should be asked again. So why are you choosing not to make a decision? Why are you choosing not to do this, and what will the consequences be? I think that's important as well. Yeah. So what anti-patterns in retrospectives do you see, Chris?
Oh, silence. Silence is definitely one. That someone a prompt question happens and it just falls flat and no one responds. And this can be particularly true of certain teams, certain cultures. There can be less of a desire to rock the boat, or they want to be overly obsequious, and that's just natural and built in. There might be a
Mm,
huge lack of psychological safety, so they don't feel like speaking out, depending on who's present.
yeah,
If you've got a
yeah,
a retrospective where you've got particularly senior members of staff, to have the more junior members say something which could rock the boat and somehow suggest that things aren't
mm,
okay, people may struggle with that. Um,
mm,
and the main one for me, and this is one that I've been personally trying to address, is just stale, boring retrospectives. The constant start, stop, continue, sad,
yeah,
mad, glad, and teams just doing that over and over and over. I worked with a team in the last year, and I'd not long come into the company. I said, "Oh, are you retrospecting?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And they shared this Confluence page showing all their retrospectives.
mm,
And I kid you not, every retrospective for the past year was a sad, mad, glad one. And I was like, okay, I mean, it's great that you're doing retrospective. Congratulations, keep that
yeah,
up. Hopefully, it's generating you some great insights. My concern is that by doing the same thing over and over, the prompts are stale, so probably you might be getting the same results over and over. The same things may be coming up. So
yeah,
what could we try differently? So my own personal mission has been to try and create more fun in the workplace, create more themed, engaging retrospective, which I find are particularly important in the virtual world, where it's very,
yes,
very easy to just, oh, I've just got a Slack message, I'm just going to respond to that, or something
yeah,
catches your eye
yeah,
and
it
you,
is.
you go and look at another web
Yeah,
page, or you're thinking of your next task and you look at that. Whereas when everyone's face to face, you tend to be a bit more present. Now, also the reason for it is when you're on a virtual call, our attention spans, they're not designed for hour plus long meetings. I think it's 20 to 40 minutes for an adult can focus before they need a break. So for me, having shorter, sharper, engaging retrospectives where people are
mm,
part of it and they're regularly interacting,
yeah,
they're regularly physically doing something,
yes,
that to
yes,
me is
yeah.
one of the anti patterns I'm personally trying to correct myself.
Yes, and I'm wondering if so. I've gotten these little toys prompted by my colleague Dio at the QCon conferences that I play with when I have meetings, because
Hmm.
when somebody else is talking, I get this, like, I get a bit fidgety, and if I
Hmm.
don't have this, I've noticed that then I play with my phone. But if I play with my phone, maybe something comes up. Yeah, you have
I've
something as well.
I've got all sorts. I've got a little Groot on my desk. He's my
Oh,
totem to remind me to be people first. We are people first, and it's my
yeah,
Guardians of Agility motto: people first. So I've got him on my desk that I fidget
yeah.
with. I showed you earlier. I've got my tiny hands that I bought to stroke my cat.
Yeah,
These are
oof,
my thinking hands, which I know you
oof.
said a little bit creepy, right? But these are just fidgety
Yeah,
things
I'll
that
have
I
nightmares now.
have.
Thank you.
And the other one, and you were talking about it earlier, having your octopuses as your audience. Right
Yeah,
between my webcam, I've got two little googly eyes that I've stuck on to my screen to
yeah,
remind me that I'm talking to people. So I look into those
yeah.
googly eyes too.
I don't mind talking to octopuses. Actually, it doesn't really have to be people for my sake. But I wanted to congratulate you on those templates that you're sharing with the world. All those great retrospective templates you're making in Miro, Chris. I've been sending those links out to people because I think it's great that you're sharing it just with everybody. So I think
Well,
everybody who's watching this should go in and check these retrospective templates and try them out, because
thank you for that.
it is
I've
important to change.
Yeah, I think I've shared. This week was my 51st retrospective template I'd created. So last week was 50. I plan to release a new one every week, and to be honest, it's something I enjoy doing. And I've had lots of people approach me and say, "Hey, could we help you, or could you come and join exclusively our retro service and help build templates for us?" And as soon as they said that, I was like, "Well, I'm all about doing it for free. I want to help the community, and I don't want to put anything I do behind a paywall." So, and I think as soon as it became work, I would disconnect with it. But for me, it's something that I enjoy doing. It's fun, and the stories that I get back from people saying how much they enjoy them and the results they've caused. That's why I keep doing it. So yeah, no plans to stop in that respect. We'll continue with the retrospective charge there. And what I've loved seeing is just more and more people now sharing their own. I'm
Mm.
connected with people in South America who are doing their own versions. I'm connected with people in the UK who are doing their own versions. As I
Yeah.
mentioned Dave Westgarth earlier. He's regularly doing these sports themes ones. You've got Steve Sampson Jones, who I regularly collaborate with. He's amazing with visuals, and he's doing a lot of animated style ones like Disney
Oh,
and all sorts.
yeah.
And it's just seeing it's almost like there's a growing demand for these themed retrospectives, and more people are creating and sharing them. So I think it's growing. My next mission is to now bring fun to the remaining agile ceremonies. So post this, I'm going to look into how I can bring these sorts of fun into other ones. I think my next plan is to do a number of themed team charters. All for me begins with starting with a good team charter, get that psychological safety built in, get everyone on aligned and on board with how we're working. And if I could make a nice themed charter that wasn't just here's a blank
Hmm.
square boxed template
Yeah.
canvas, that's my next mission.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
So coming
I
back to
was
your book
I was
then,
thinking about the thing you.
go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry. No, it was just when you said this thing that you sometimes went into a company and you saw they had these just the same retrospective every time, and I think of it like this: that brains are very lazy. Brains consume a lot of energy, so we're optimizing our brains to be lazy, because
Mm,
I mean that saves a lot of energy. And if you're doing the retrospectives in the same way every time, I tend to see also that people are coming up with exactly the same issues every time. So sometimes people are saying, why are all our retrospectives the same? We're always just talking about the coffee or something like that. And one reason for that is that they're sometimes, maybe they're discussing things that they can't really change. So they're
mm,
just nagging about it instead of discussing something they can change. But another part is definitely that if they're asking the same questions, they'll get the same answers. So I think that what you're doing and what other people are doing with making different templates means that you'll sort of kickstart your brain. You'll teach your brain into thinking about new things.
Completely, and that's one of the main reasons that I do this. Yeah, if you're asked, "What are you sad about?" and you hear the same question all the time, you probably will mention the same things. If the
Hmm.
alternative is, um, agile. So think of Looney Tunes, right? You've got Pepe Le Pew, the skunk character, and things smell.
Yeah,
And the prompt we did for Looney Tunes there was Agile Le Pew. Is there anything that stinks about our ways of working? Is there anything we can freshen up a bit? So you've all you've done is
yeah,
you've taken the same crux of it. What's not quite working well, and you've put it into
yeah,
a bit of a fun theme, and you've provoked different, hopefully, a different response as a
yeah,
consequence.
yeah,
We've got questions in there like you've got Speedy Gonzalez, and he always says arriba, arriba, ondale, speed, speed, speed. The prompt in that one is, are we working at a sustainable pace? Have we got scope to increase our speed, or should we hit the brakes a little bit?
mm,
You've got Wile E. Coyote. He's constantly trying to conquer the Roadrunner, and he's constantly experimenting with different explosives and weapons and things to try and catch his Roadrunner. And he always says, try this on for size. So try this on for size. What did we learn via experimentation? What can we try next? There's just lots of little different things or different prompts you can ask as part of retrospectives that just engage the brain very, very differently.
yeah,
And I think you can apply the same to other ceremonies. So the very typical stand-up questions that a teams will ask or ask. I know it's been altered slightly in the recent Scrum guide, but the age-old ones that everyone's familiar with is what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? What blockers do I have? Now, I've delivered talks about this to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I asked this question: how many people have been in a stand-up and asked the question what blockers they have, and it's just met with silence, no blockers, or just nothing? And so many people are like, yep, done that, experienced that. So I say to them, okay, if you alter that question ever so slightly, and you ask that person or you ask the team to answer the question, what help could your IP be provided today, or what would help me move
mm,
forwards on something?
mm,
It's a slightly different question, achieving the same outcome, but there is a resistance to I am blocked because I am blocked suggests I'm not good enough or I can't progress on my own. Whereas just saying what could I be helped with or what would support me moving forwards, there's a little bit less dissonance to it. There's a little bit less resistance to it, and it's being asked very slightly differently, and it can result in very different answers. People say, "Oh yeah, well actually, if Steph helped me
mm,
with this, I might be able to move forwards, or if someone could help me pair on this a little bit, I might be able to fix this a bit quicker." So
yeah,
rephrasing things, freshening things up, definitely one of my
yeah.
actionable takeaways I would recommend to everyone. So coming back to your book, then, if you could distill one single piece of advice to anyone looking to improve their retrospectives, I know what would it be?
Just one is very difficult, but I'll see what I can do.
I have faith in you.
Okay. So I think this one is most important.
Okay.
Try to make everyone equal, because there'll be some people who don't want to say very much. It could be cultural, it could be lack of trust, it could be lack of psychological safety, it could be shyness. Try to, if you have people like that on a team, try to prepare your retrospective so that it's not just a lot of plenum discussions. Try to make something so that it's written anonymously if you need to, or try to make people split up in smaller groups, like you can have breakout rooms with pairs or something
Hmm.
like that. I think that's one of the most important things. Try to make everybody equal. And when we start coming back to work, some of us try to avoid having retrospectives where half the people are in the same room and the other half are sitting as satellites in their own rooms. Because then the people in the same room will be talking to each other and will be sharing more. It could be not just the things that they say, and then when people online are asking what, they say, oh, nothing. But it could also be just the body language or even the
Hmm.
smells that they let out, that there is some communication between the people in the same room. And the people who are satellites will lose that communication. So try to make everybody equal. And then I think another thing is that prime directive that we talked about in the beginning, remember that it holds for you as well. You as a facilitator, you did the best you could.
Hmm.
Sometimes retrospectives suck. Sometimes they're a waste of time. Sometimes they burn and crash. But you did the best you could, and just
Mm.
try to learn from it and then move on.
Completely. I've facilitated so many retrospectives now, but I would love to say every one of them was perfect. Very much not the case. Sometimes they just it feels like I'm trying to get blood out of a stone to get people to
Yeah.
speak, no matter what techniques I'm using, no
Yes.
matter how engaging I'm
Yeah.
being, no matter how
Yeah.
psychological safe I'm trying to enable people to be, no matter how
Yeah.
many methods I use to try and enable people to speak in the way they prefer to do. Because my stance tends to be I will introduce a prompt question. I will invite silent reflection where everyone interacts individually without speaking, and then it goes on to discussion, and then I get them to dot vote and choose. So everyone's got a collective voice. It's the most important thing, and then I'll try and pull an action out of things. But sometimes even just getting the people talking is so difficult. So not every one of my
Yeah.
retrospectives lands perfectly well, and there's always room for improvement. And that's why I'm always building in those feedback loops into the ceremonies. So how could I be better?
Yeah.
It's a
Definitely.
great points there. Thank you. Now, I'm keen to talk with you. You did actually touch on upon it very slightly there. We were talking about how as we move towards this hybrid situation, what are the or how have you personally found the transition between retrospectives or meetings that were primarily held in person, co-located, versus now where they are primarily remote versus where they are likely to be soon, which is we've kind of got a mixture or a hybrid. How have you found that experience? And are there any key takeaways or things you'd share with people as to try and make those successful?
I I think that one of the things that I learned from having these online meetings is that you should always have the meetings be 55 meeting minutes instead of an hour, or 25 minutes instead of 30 minutes. That's something that I wasn't that aware of before, but I think it's something that I've become more aware of because we have these back-to-back meetings, especially now when it's online, because people are expecting, oh, they're sitting in front of their computer, we can just invite them for a meeting. So having those 5 minutes, not just for a bio break or getting coffee, but just sort of to clear your mind or to write down the notes from the last meeting,
To
it's
stretch,
really
to stand
important
up, to yeah,
to
yeah.
stretch, to stand up. Yeah. So that's one thing that's important. And then I think that when we start to come back to real life meetings or hybrid meetings, I think it's more and more important that we think about our meeting culture, that we only invite the people that really needs to be there, and the rest can just be, as you said, for awareness. They can get a resume of the action points afterwards. Just thinking about, is this meeting actually important, is it critical, the big why do we have this meeting, what do we want to get out of it, and then afterwards, as you also said, make some sort of evaluation. Did we get out of this meeting what we expected to get out of this meeting? And if not, then why not? Did we were some people missing? Was some data missing? Was it the wrong time of the day for this kind of meetings? Because there's some meetings that are good in the morning and some meetings are good in the afternoon. And don't even get me started on time zones here.
Hmm.
But I think we need to be a lot more critical about meetings.
Completely agree. A lot of companies have this meeting heavy culture. And coming back to your point about reducing the default time of meetings, there's a very easy hack you can do in Microsoft Outlook to change your default settings so that rather than a meeting going in as an hour and a half hour, it can go in as 25 minutes or 50 minutes. That change, I did that months and months ago, and I encouraged everyone to do the same. It's like, please do this. Do it for your own benefit, do it for everyone else's benefit, because it means that next time you put a meeting in, it's not going to start as an hour by default. And as you say, that gives that decompression time. It gives time people to have a bio break or stretch or just not look at a screen for 5 minutes before they go
Yeah.
into their next meeting. Because the consequence, think about what actually happens if you don't have that. Meetings are back to back,
Yeah.
which means everyone arrives about anything between 2 and 5 minutes past the actual time slot. And if
Yes.
you depending on the
Yes.
number of people in that meeting, that's 5 minutes times 10 or 20. So that's a lot of hour, or that will add up to a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
Whereas if and often sometimes people are just sat on the last 10 minutes of a call, just not adding much anyway, perhaps, or
Mm.
already disengaged because they've been on a long meeting and they're not producing quite the as a team, they're switching off a bit and probably not producing the right level of quality that you'd be looking for. So yeah,
Yeah.
completely on board with that. Reducing a meeting heavy culture. I know a lot of companies are doing these. kind of no meeting days, or they're doing half
Yeah.
days where they just say, right, there's no meetings during this time
Yeah.
frame to allow deep focus, and that works for some.
Mm,
So there's lots of techniques out there, I think, that could definitely help.
yeah. And I think that we should take those meetings back into the real life meetings as well. We shouldn't forget those things that we learned.
Mm. Well, again, coming back to the way I used to work, you'd have a meeting that ran from 1 till 2 p.m., and then your next meeting could be 2 p.m., but it'd be at a building across the other side of the campus, for example, if you're and you've got to then maybe finish the meeting earlier and rush across or arrive late carrying all your stuff. So yeah, we definitely need to carry some of these new learnings to the physical world
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
I am conscious of time, I know. You know I'm a huge fan of retrospective. We've talked about all these themed ones I do. What is your favorite retrospective theme or template? I'm keen to hear. What's your go-to? What have you enjoyed most doing?
Well, actually, I really like the ship or the pirate ship or the sail ship. It's got many names. It's it's relatively simple to draw on a whiteboard. Even I can draw something that looks like a ship and looks like rocks underneath the water. And I've learned to draw an anchor as well, so that's really good. I like the simplicity of it, and I like that there's so many different parts in the ship retrospective that you can choose to focus on, or you
Mm,
can choose to prepare beforehand. You can prepare the bounty island, so the aim or the goal of the mission. That's something that can be done at the retrospective, or it can be prepared, or it could be in the mission statement from the team. Making the name of the ship could be like the team name or the project name, and that's something that could have been done beforehand, but it's also
mhm,
something that you could do actually at the retrospective. And then you can spend time on having the wind blowing in the sails, that's a good thing, the anchor holding you back, and the rocks that are unforeseen, things that you're afraid of, things that you are scared of. I really like that. So but I remember that you once asked me, so what should be my next themed retrospective if I should put my idea into the next Chris Stone retrospective template.
yes, that was going to be my next
And
question.
I thought it would be. So I've thought about it. So I was cleaning out my kitchen the other day, and I thought we could definitely have a kitchen themed retrospective, because there'll be food that smells, and there'll be I mean, I didn't have maggots, but you could have maggots. You could have like, oh, a little nugget of chocolate that I forgot that I had, which I'm very happy about finding, or anything like that. But then I thought it might be too gross, so I also thought about an aquarium retrospective. I don't know if you have an
Okay.
aquarium
I
retrospective.
don't I don't have an aquarium retrospective. I don't have a so um Ari Van Bennekem, one of the co-authors of the Agile Manifesto, he challenged me to do a cooking theme retrospective.
Ah,
So I've already got like a cooking kitcheny
yeah,
theme retro on the backlog, but
yeah,
an aquarium one I do not.
yeah. Because
And my
because of
mind
the
my
octopus,
mind immediately goes to, yeah, octopuses. It goes to
sharks.
it goes to Finding Nemo, and I'm thinking of the tank and their little false volcano and them going shark bait, ooh ah, and things like that. And I'm just, yeah, I'll
Finding a
have a think.
treasure,
Sorry.
finding a treasure box on the bottom
Yeah,
of
the
the
treasure. You've got the little scuba diver looking for treasure at the bottom of the aquarium. There's something about the filter, keeping things fresh and ways of working.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, and
there's definitely
oxygen
something I
in
could
the
do aquarium
water.
wise.
Yeah,
Sounds good. I will do an aquarium themed retrospective. Okay.
thank you.
Any final thoughts you'd like to share with any of the listeners? I know.
Yes, this is completely unrelated to retrospectives, but I just heard a review of the new book by Oliver Bergman that comes out, called 4,000 Weeks: Time Management for Mortals, and it's about that in an average life you have 4,000 weeks available. And I think that's a daunting thought, because it's about 77 years, which is the average length of a life. And I know that since I'm 50 now, I've spent 2,600 of my weeks, which is a bit worrying. I never thought about it like that. But I think that listening to that resume or summary of that book makes me really think about, am I spending my weeks in the right way? Because when you put it like that, 4,000 weeks, it becomes much more manageable and much more finite. And then you can think about, did I spend this week out of the 4,000 I have in my whole life, did I spend that well or not?
Mm.
So that's a, you can, it could be a depressing thought, but it could also be a thought that might make you reflect a little bit about your life, like a retrospective over each week, perhaps.
I mean, I personally do what I call solo spective, so weekly retrospective with myself, and I do daily journaling, and that's my own stand up with myself, and that's all in the interest of self awareness
Yeah,
and helping me understand: am I moving closer to my goals or further away? What could I try next that might help me? I haven't ever thought about it in the context of I have this amount of time remaining. And as you say, it could be argued, depending on your lens of perspective, that sobering thought of you have 4,000 weeks, that could be a threat. That could be, oh my God, that's worrying.
yeah,
Where it could be an opportunity. I've got this amount of time remaining.
hmm,
How can I best use that in a way that I'm
yeah,
bringing value or enjoying life?
yeah.
So, interesting final thought. Thank you very much for being involved in the show, Aino. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for sharing and talking with me about retrospectives. I feel like I'm losing my voice all of a sudden. Um,
It's good. We're almost over then.
future episodes of this season, we still have a couple of episodes. So that you are episode 7 of season 2. And we're also going to be hearing from we've got future guests as Ravi J. We've got Richard Kasparowski and Jeff Watts. A number of great people to hear from. So do look out for the new episodes. And as always, don't stop believing, folks. Bye now.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris. It's been a pleasure.